Good evening. My name is Steve Gallios. I'm trustee of the Napa Valley Unified School Board and part of Class 13 and part of the Children with Dignity practicum. I want to welcome my inmates, I'm sorry, our fellow classmates, guests, honored guests, and the press. I asked Jeff why he was here tonight. He should be up at the City Council in St. Helena, or American Canyon, Jeff. Take your choice. I would like to say that we have some really, maybe a cast of thousands and some dancing girls and some things, a Cecil B. DeMille type epic, but we can't do that tonight, folks, because the nature of our practicum is children with dignity, and it's just, there's no way when I get done here there's anything really lighthearted about it, so I'm really sorry. You're gonna, if you wanted to see something entertaining, like, exciting, you got to go get a shoot 'em up or something. Anyway, our practicum is about children with dignity, and before I even begin, I want to just define the word dignity, so I think we get a perspective of what we're looking at here. Dignity means the quality or state of being worthy, honored, or esteemed. And I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this, because that dignity is a word that I think we need to understand in reference to what we're going to present tonight. Okay? Let me just give you an overview of what we're going to do. Real simple. I'm going to speak for about another 30 seconds. I'm going to introduce a lady from Child Protective Services who's going to tell a story about Child Protective Services. And follow up with her little presentation. We have a short film here that is put out by the state of California on Child Protective Services. It has to do, and I'll cover that in a second, about the process we go through and what happens on an intervention or how we deal with child abuse in a general sense. And then after that, I'm going to get back up and talk a little bit about how we approached our practicum, what our vision was. After we tell the story, we wanted to frame the problem and look at what kind of an assessment we can make to see if we can make a difference or make a change in what we perceive as a problem, something to give some dignity to the children in this community. Okay, I think I've said enough, and what I would like to do now is introduce Denise Trena. She's a supervisor at Child Protective Services, and she is going to tell you a story. Denise.
Hi. What I'm going to talk about is not going to be fun, like Steve said. He asked me to say a few things about how children move into the system, what some of the reasons are for us being involved in a case in Child Protective Services, and also what it's like for the child. Some of the reasons that we get involved are obviously physical abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. And these are very broad categories, and I'll tell you a little bit, but not a whole lot about exactly what goes on, because I only have 5 minutes, so this could be a whole day presentation. First of all, reports come in to us from mandated reporters for the most part, law enforcement, teachers, therapists, child care professionals, medical professionals. These are people that are mandated to report. If they don't report, there is a fine that they are subject to. We also get reports from non-mandated reporters, neighbors, relatives, you. Some of the reasons that children might be referred, as I said, are physical abuse. They can have bruises and more severe things that happen, sexual abuse, and also neglect. And by neglect, what I mean is the child is not really providing for the care of the child, food, clothing, and shelter. Depending on the severity of the abuse or neglect, we might remove a child from the home, or we might leave the child in the home and provide services. Some of the places that a child might be removed from, or that we might go to and bring a child back to our office, are schools. A child might be brought into CPS by law enforcement or by one of the mandated reporters or an interested relative or neighbor. Sometimes the stores, and I'll tell a little more about that, and from home, obviously. Now, imagine, if you will, with me for the next few minutes, put yourself in the place of a child. We might have an 18-month-old child, and this is a little one. We might be called out to the home because the NSIB is there, and they are our drug enforcement folks with law enforcement, and mom and dad are being arrested. So we have an 18-month-old in the home, and the parents are not providing any names of relatives or neighbors or anyone that can take the child. So we might have to go to the home and take an 18-month-old child with us back to the office. We get there and we can't find any diapers for the child. There is no clothing that's clean or that we can find. We can't find any bottle or anything, so we just take the child, possibly in a diaper and a t-shirt, back to our office. And we might have to change the child's diaper once we get back to the office. We might have to find some formula or some milk or some food to feed the child because the child hadn't eaten in a while. And of course the child is not happy because a stranger has taken the child from his or her home. So we might have to try to comfort the child. And I can't tell you how many times we've had a child in the office that we can't console because there's just nothing we can do. So they cry and cry and cry, and we cry too. We might be called to Mervyn's. I've been there. We might have a 3-year-old who's with mom, and mom has just shoplifted, and she's being taken off to jail, and there's no one that can come and take the 3-year-old, so we might take the 3-year-old back to our office. And again, even though I may be a friendly face, this child doesn't know me, and they're not happy. We've had children cry and cry and cry. And then if you enter another factor into it, a child who might not speak English, and I'm an English-speaking person, and I can't even communicate to the child in their language. And this can happen infrequently because we do have bilingual staff, but on occasion this happens. We have a 5-year-old in school, in childcare, and the 5-year-old has disclosed that he or she has been sexually abused. So we have to go and pick up this child and bring the child back to our office for an interview. And we find that yes, this child has been sexually abused. We have a 10-year-old who's brought into us by law enforcement because a report has been made that this child has been beaten with a belt and has bruises all over the child's body. So we have to interview the child and determine what we need to do next. We have a 14-year-old child. This 14-year-old child, and yes, it is a child. I know some of you probably have 14-year-olds or had 14-year-olds. I know I did. And sometimes they can be very trying. And you don't know what to do with this child. Well, you certainly don't throw the child up against the wall or severely beat the child because that's not a method of discipline that's acceptable in this country, nor morally. So we might have a 14-year-old in the office. What happens when we have these children at the office? They are interviewed, and then sometimes we need to place them in a foster home because we can't find another relative, or we can't place back with the parent because the parent is unable to protect the child. So we put them in the room. We have 3 visit rooms with toys and some things to occupy children. But sometimes they sit in the room with another staff person, and they wait until we can find a foster home. For babies, we can find a foster home probably within minutes. Everybody wants a baby. But to try to place maybe an 8-year-old who's been sexually abused, not too many people want these children in their home. So the children sometimes have to wait for several hours until we can find a home, an appropriate home for the child. And it's pretty boring, it's pretty scary, and we would like to see our group some extra things to possibly provide for the children so that they're not feeling all alone and that no one's out there that cares about them. Some of these children come again with the clothes on their back. Some of them come in the middle of the night, and sometimes they're hungry, and sometimes they are in need of a friend, and sometimes we just don't know what to do with them, but we do our best, and for the most part, we do find homes for them. I don't want to paint a totally bleak picture because we do have lots of wonderful foster parents in Napa County who will be called day or night, and will put aside whatever they're doing and take a strange child into their home and provide a family for these children. And that's about all I have to say. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. What I want to show you now is a short film which sort of summarizes and puts into picture form and narrative part of what Denise described to you. And I think at the very end you'll see it. I think it's a very powerful message at the very end. So what I'd like to do, we haven't, you saw us messing around up here with the TV, so I'm going to try to power it up. Here, how about that? And then can I get someone on the lights back there? If it works, we'll be off and running. Okay, here we go.
Makes this initial call to a child protective agency. Your local child protective agencies are typically your county social services department, commonly referred to as Child Protective Services, or CPS, and your local police or sheriff's department. The second step is to file a written report with the agency you called within 36 hours. This written report is made on a Department of Justice form SS 8572. This form can be obtained from your local child protective agency.
Once you make the phone call and file a report, your reporting responsibilities are over. You become protected by the law and you avoid the penalties that might result from not reporting.
Making a report of child abuse is not snitching, it's not accusing, it's not blaming, it's not judging. The person who suspects child abuse and makes a report is calling upon professional people who are trained to do this to make an investigation.
While responses to reports may vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, the basic procedure is similar.
When you call CPS, what you're going to do is get a social worker who is trained in taking phone referrals.
Their job is really to take a look at the indicators of abuse and make a decision about how quickly we need to respond.
And although we may not be able to respond right then and there to your specific report, you may be coming in and telling us information that supports a prior referral.
What's important to understand is that we have to have sufficient data to make a determination about how we're going to respond to the case, and that's very important in terms of the mandated reporter's role. The more information they can give us, the better our response will be and the better quality our response will be.
Knowing how and when to report is the responsibility of all mandated reporters. But for many, the very thought of reporting is frightening. All too often, mandated reporters fail to take action due to their fears. Fear of being wrong, fear of retaliation, fear of liability, and fear that the child will be removed from the home. All are common among mandated reporters.
The fear factor certainly deters a lot of people who would normally file a report.
And I remember the first time I got a subpoena to testify in a child abuse case, and I was very frightened.
I can understand people's reluctance. They're unsure of the criminal justice system. They're not sure that anything's going to be done. They're concerned about exposing themselves to liability.
You have to get beyond your own fears, and you have to think about your responsibility to the children.
It's hard. It's scary. A lot of us worry about whether we're going to lose our license. Did we do this in anger? Did we do this in frustration? Did we do this vindictively? We go through all those things.
Forget the fear. Forget about being afraid to speak out for that child. That child needs to have someone protect them. The child is not strong enough, big enough to protect herself or himself. You have to be the one that says, I care enough about this child to take the risk. I care enough about this child to make this child's world a better place.
Additionally, you may be frustrated because of stories you've heard or experiences you've had, believing that CPS won't respond, believing that you will never know the outcome of your report, or believing that your report doesn't matter are common frustrations.
Frustration is not a good reason to avoid reporting to Children's Protective Services.
They get frustrated because of confidentiality rules that prevent us from disclosing to them what it is we're doing.
why we're not doing it or why we are intervening in the way we do.
Just as the police don't always respond and come out and arrest somebody when you report a crime, a child is not always removed from the home when you report something.
The fact that you don't read something in the paper, the fact that a police officer doesn't come back to follow up with you, doesn't mean nothing's happening. In fact, frequently, your mere phone call gets the wheels rolling.
And even if you report 10 times and 9 of them, nothing happens, or 99 times and 99 things do happen. Families do change a little bit because of each report. The system changes a little bit. There's a paper trail and things do happen.
Nearly all abused children come into contact with one or more mandated reporters. That's a fact. You play a vital role in protecting those children.
While you are required by law to report, you are not an investigator. Simply put, if you suspect, report.
For the people who aren't reporting, I've just got to tell you how courageous I think you are, and how what you're doing is beyond nice. You make a huge difference in people's lives.
If you can bring some light into what might be going on in that very dark environment that child lives in, then you have to take the risk.
Remember that the cycle of abuse continues forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. An abuser abuses somebody, and that somebody often becomes an abuser, and that abuser abuses somebody, and that cycle just never stops until somebody says, it's going to stop here.
Be their voice. And it's okay, even if your voice cracks and even if you start to cry, it's okay. Because it's just a part of what we have to do. It's just the responsible thing to do.
When I was little, I wondered why anyone would hurt me like that. No one talked about it. No one noticed.
If you suspect child abuse, report.
When the principal called me in, I thought I was in deep trouble. But then he didn't yell anything. He just wanted to help.
Make children your priority. You may be the only light in an abused child's dark world.
I wanted to run. I wanted to hide. But more than anything, I just wanted it to stop.
Your report is the first step to turn an abused child's shadows of suffering to light.
I'm not sure what is going to happen now. My whole family has a lot to sort out. I only know that it's over. I won't be hurt anymore.
Jill, how much time? I saw the yellow light. What's that mean?
That means 5 minutes.
Oh. Thank you, Louie. Okay, we'll do it. Okay, we'll have to sort of speed this up a little bit. However, we've told you the story. We needed to lay the groundwork so you understood generally what the problem was. What our task was is to try to find a particular focus so we could make a difference in what was happening and what we presented so far in the story. And what we focused in on was the situation where the Child Protective Services went into a home and took a child out of that home, and say in the middle of the night, the child, let's say, is 10 years old. They have to leave with just the clothes on their back, and maybe someone says, put your clothes, gather as many clothes up as you can find, we're going to take you someplace else. And what we've done is we've gone through a process of trying to make an assessment of how we could change that paradigm, make that process more human, add some dignity to this process so the children feel validated and not just a pawn in some kind of a larger game of life. So what I want to do now is have Lily Burke come up and talk to you about some of the things that we are attempting to do. Lily.
Thanks. There's 3 holding rooms in the County Health and Human Services for Children Protective Services. And those rooms were very clean and they were very nice and they had windows. But what the social workers kept stressing was that this doesn't look like a home. There weren't any curtains on the windows. There wasn't a television, there wasn't a comfortable chair to sit on. And what they wanted from us was to supply the rooms with things like games and books, some toys, maybe one television, but not televisions in every room, because sometimes the children would meet with their parents afterwards, and the social workers would want them to interact with their parents and not be watching television, or read to their children instead of putting them in a crib. It really opened my eyes to the things that I take for granted of what a parent should be, and it was a real eye-opener for all of us. And as an interior designer, I talked about how it might be fun to design each room with a theme, like Disneyland for the little kids, sports for the middle ages, and maybe a wildlife room. These kids are from 0 to 17 years old, so to put them in a little room with dolls and toys when you're 17 wouldn't feel very comfortable. Next, I'm going to hand this over to Steve. We came up with a really good idea for the children's clothing.
My 28-year-old daughter works with kids that are in this certain situation, and one of her ideas was to have a duffel bag for the kids to put their stuff in. A lot of times they show up with all their stuff in a garbage bag, and that's their only relationship to what they have, and so basically it's almost like they have trash. So we're providing, I've went into Target, and we have a program together to purchase bags through Target. We're looking for the funding still, and Dave's working on that, so that the kids will be provided a bag to either go home with or to a foster home or whatever else, so they have that dignity that we're talking about, and showing that we care, and then they have a real good feeling about themselves, putting their things in something that they care about.
One more little piece that I have. It has to do with the financial piece. We wanted to be sure that if we came up with some kind of a fix on this, that it would be an ongoing, the financial piece that would be funded on a perpetual basis. And we've been working on it right now. I think Dave Dillabaugh has worked with the 2030 Club, and I believe we'll be able to get some long-term financing for this. And what we really need it for, after the initial, I'll go over this real quick. The cost to initiate this plan is $1,200 for the bags, TV $250, games $150, and we get down the line, about $2,000 to capitalize it and get it started. But the ongoing cost would be about $600 a year to provide 60 bags is what Child Protective Services thought we would need on an annual basis. So it's 60 bags times 10, about $600 a year, and we feel very confident we can get 2030 or some other benevolent soul to buy into that. So just want to let you know we're looking for a permanent long-term funding piece for that thing, so it just doesn't fall through the cracks. And now we're just about done. And Rachel Welch, our
Frank.
Rachel Welch, I remember her very well. My first girlfriend. Rachel Frank.
This is very close to me because, one, I am a mandated reporter, and last summer I did have to contact CPS, so it was a very moving thing for me to be a part of, and I'm glad to help with these children. But we wanted to make somewhat of a difference during this difficult and traumatic stage in the children's life. I have witnessed firsthand how the experience is, and it is not a comfortable situation for any of the parties involved. Oftentimes the children are given a plastic bag and asked to give some things. We feel that if we can provide the kids with their own sports or duffel bag they can keep, then they may have a sense of ownership. We wanted to help them leave in a more dignified way. And what we hope to do, like they said, is to refurnish the rooms, provide more games, some toys, some things to interact with their parents or whoever, you know, whether it be grandparents or whatever, the people that they'll be trying to reestablish a more positive relationship with. And that's about it. And we're still seeking donations, and we're looking for service clubs to maybe help us continue this with years to come. So thank you.
I'm Dave Dillabaugh, this class commercial loan officer for the Vintage Bank.
Rachel Frank, class 13. Thank you, Dee Cooney and Jill, for having me join.
A.K.A. Rachel Welch, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Steve Gallios.
Lily Burke, interior designer.
Steve Hazelton.